Thank you for coming today. I'm attorney Gloria Allred, and this is Lizzette Martinez, and we'll both be making a statement. And then at 12 o'clock, I have an additional statement, which is breaking news. Today I'm here with a victim of R. Kelly to respond to Mr. Kelly's defense attorney, Douglas Anton, who filed a letter in federal court in New York last week in the case now pending in United States District Court for the Eastern District of New York against his client, R. Kelly. In that case, Mr. Kelly, also known as the defendant, is charged with felonies involving sex trafficking and a criminal enterprise. There are charges filed by the United States Attorney's Office on behalf of 5 victims in that case. I represent 3 of the 5 victims for whom charges have been filed. Lizzette Martinez, who is here with me today, is not one of those 5 victims. However, she is a potential witness. Lizzette is a victim who told what she alleges about her victimization by Mr. Kelly in the Lifetime documentary Surviving R. Kelly. She has reported what she alleges to law enforcement, and I'm very proud of her, because it takes a great deal of courage to recall what was and is a very painful experience in her life. The trauma of many victims is only compounded by the statement in the letter filed by Mr. Anton in court last week, in which he alleges that victims of R. Kelly have, quote, groupie remorse, end quote. Many victims of Mr. Kelly were underage and, as a matter of law, cannot consent to sexual abuse by Mr. Kelly or anyone else. To suggest that they did consent or have consented to being targeted by a predator and his enablers, as if they had known that they were being targeted, manipulated, and abused, is extremely upsetting to many victims who were vulnerable and were clearly victims of a predator and his enablers. Lizzette feels that she must speak out on this mischaracterization of victims by the defense, because it's unfair and it's hurtful and it's triggering more pain and, in some cases, guilt and shame that no victim should have to bear. I am very proud of her that she is speaking out today. She's courageous, and I commend her that she's willing to speak her truth to the defense attorneys for Mr. Kelly, who are trying to shame and blame the many victims of Mr. Kelly. And now, Lizzette.
Thank you.
Here, move over a little, please. Thank you.
Sorry, yeah.
Yes, I do.
My name is Lizzette Martinez, and I have survived many things in my life. Robert Kelly's indictment doesn't bring me happiness or joy. It does make me think of all the years of abuse that he chose to put upon women for over 25 years. Mr. Kelly could have been many things, many great things, but he chose to be a habitual abuser instead of getting the help he so needed. Today he sits in a jail cell where his actions and the actions of the enterprise which he controlled have put him. Mr. Kelly has no one to blame but himself. Many of us were abused as children. However, we did not choose to turn around and abuse others. For Mr. Kelly's defense team to call victims who were all mostly underage remorseful groupies is the most desperate attempt to once again take responsibility off of a predator and throw it onto minors who could not legally consent to sex with Mr. Kelly. The responsibility fell and falls on Robert, the adult. So now we are calling underage child pornography victims remorseful groupies. This is the most insensitive, ridiculous attempt to save Mr. Kelly. It's too late. It just seems as though your time is up. All in all, this has been very emotionally challenging for me, but with the support from others like Gloria, I am starting to really see and know that there is a life for me after abuse. Healing will take long, as the wounds run deep, and mine have been with me since I was a young girl, the age of 17, walking in the mall, who just wanted to be someone. Unfortunately, I was preyed upon by Mr. Kelly and his enterprise. Healing is possible. I am strong. I lived it. I survived it. And now I seek justice. To all of the survivors who spoke your truth and those who will do so in the future, be proud and know that you are helping to make a predator and the powerful people behind him held accountable. They can no longer hide behind fame and power. Thank you.
And we'll take some questions, if you have any.
You mentioned that she's not one of the 3 people that you represent, or one of the 5 victims that have come forward.
She's not one of the 5. She's not one of the 5 victims for whom charges have been filed by the United States Attorney for the Eastern District of New York. Charges for which he was arraigned on Friday in New York. I was present for the arraignment. She's not one of those 5. She is a potential witness in that case.
How old are you now, Lizzette?
42.
How hard has it been to come forward and talk about what happened when you were 17, decades ago?
You know, obviously it was hard, talking about trauma and things that you went through as a child. You know, those things stay with you forever. But for me, I just felt that I had to speak up. I just heard those parents talking and crying and really worried about their daughters and other survivors coming forward. I just couldn't stay quiet. I have a daughter myself, and as painful as it is, it has been empowering as well. And now, you know, with everything that's happening, I really don't regret it. There are no regrets.
So I have also been asked by a reporter this morning, which case is going first? Is it going to be the case filed by the district attorney, state charges in Cook County, in Chicago, or is it going to be the felony case filed by the United States Attorney for the Northern District of Illinois, many felonies there, or is it going to be the case filed by the United States Attorney in New York? The answer is, when I was in court on Friday in New York, that same question was asked by the judge of the prosecutors and the defense attorneys. And the answer that the defense attorney, Mr. Anton, gave was that all of those prosecutors in those cases have indicated that their case was going first. So he could not answer that question at that time. Neither am I able to answer that question. I don't know which case will go first.
Either one of you can answer this, but I feel like accusations against R. Kelly we've known for a very, very long time.
Mm-hmm.
Is it frustrating that it's taken so long for a case like this to happen?
Would you like to answer that, or would you like me to answer that?
You can go first. And then
Okay,
I'll go
all right.
after you.
All right, so I've been representing persons who allege they are victims of Mr. Kelly for a very long time. And I know that for many of my clients, they wondered if justice would ever come. Would he ever be prosecuted? Because, of course, he was prosecuted many years ago in Chicago. Ultimately, he was acquitted by a jury. But that was a different case because at the time the alleged victim of the then charged child pornography, declined to testify, and the defendant, Mr. Kelly, in that case, denied that he was the one in the video that was charged as child pornography. So the jury may have felt that it could not find beyond a reasonable doubt that, in fact, Mr. Kelly was guilty. Since that time, quite a bit has happened, and as a matter of fact, there are allegations that Mr. Kelly may have obstructed justice, and the allegation by the prosecutors, and this was mentioned in court on Friday as well, was that on the issue of whether he should be afforded bail or not, was that he may have attempted to interfere with witnesses, and that would be, if proven, obstruction of justice, and that may have been one of the reasons that the alleged victim in that case declined to testify in that earlier Chicago case. So, and that was given as a reason why one of the many reasons why he should not be freed on bail, because if in fact he attempted to obstruct justice in the past and perhaps intimidate witnesses, that he should not be released. In any case, he was found to be a potential danger to the community and a flight risk. And he was not released. So that's a way of saying that many alleged victims over the years wondered if there ever would be justice. Would a jury convict? If he were prosecuted on other charges, would they convict him? Would they believe the word of a powerful, rich, formerly well-loved celebrity in the music world over the word of victims whom they had never met, they didn't know? And so, yes, I mean, and then even after many victims cooperated with law enforcement and spoke to them, it seemed like it was taking a long time for charges to be filed. But that's the nature of the criminal justice system, that prosecutors want to be sure that they have a case that they believe that could result in a finding by a jury of guilt beyond a reasonable doubt prior to filing it.
Do you believe this documentary, this Lifetime documentary, maybe helped things along?
Pardon me?
Do you think this Lifetime documentary helped things along?
I think that the Lifetime documentary certainly inspired and empowered many persons who allege that they are victims to feel that, knowing that there are others, that they could now come forward and speak, and that they would have the confidence to do so. I'm just looking at the timing, and so I think I can tell you now. As I've said, that there are many alleged victims whom I represent who have never come forward to the press. That's still the case, and but who have come forward to law enforcement. For some of them, charges have been filed. For some, they may still be filed. So it's my understanding that more charges will be filed today. These will be state charges, and they will be in a different state than Illinois and New York. And in that other state, the victim for whom charges will be filed is a person whom I represent. I'll leave it to the district attorney in that other case, whom I understand is going to, and is presently about to, have a press conference to announce the filing of charges, more felony charges, against Mr. Kelly for a victim in that other state. So this will be the fourth case. I just found out about this morning, but with respect to the district attorney there, I am going to allow him to announce it. We will not be providing the name of that alleged victim. She will be known only as a victim in the court filing. And so she would like her privacy. She's not going to be doing any interviews. Her name has not been known outside of law enforcement and, of course, me as her attorney. Pardon me?
The charges?
Yeah,
Is this in Minnesota? Mike Kramer making the announcement?
it is in Minnesota. He apparently has announced it.
Can you tell us the age of the victim?
Underage,
Still?
not now.
And the charges?
Well, I prefer if he announced them, but if he's already announced them, has he?
Yes.
What did he say the charges were?
They just mentioned it on Twitter, sorry. Just
Okay.
following along.
Okay. Well, I'll just say they're felonies, and right now, until he announces them, I'd rather not say what they are. So, that's a fourth case against Mr. Kelly, the second state case, and there are 2 federal cases. So, I think in all of the decades that I've been practicing law, I've never seen so many prosecutions of one celebrity in different jurisdictions as I am now seeing in reference to R. Kelly. Would you like to say anything about the fact that apparently just now there is an announcement that more charges are being filed in Minnesota against Mr. Kelly on behalf of yet another person who is alleged to be a victim?
Well, I'd just like to say that, I never thought I would see this day.
Mhm.
Many victims feel as though it's been a long time coming.
Mhm.
We're seeing justice, like, every day it's a new development, and I'm happy to see that all of us coming out wasn't in vain.
Okay, very good.
Prostitution.
Prostitution, okay. That's what the district attorney is alleging. I will say this. My client is not a person who should be characterized as a prostitute, nor was she a prostitute with Mr. Kelly. I am concerned about that type of charge being filed, but I understand that given what the facts are that are alleged in that case, my understanding from law enforcement is that in Minnesota, in reference to state charges, that is the only charge that can be filed against Mr. Kelly. Again, I will state that everyone that I represent, I would call a victim. And anyone who is underage, who has been the victim of sexual abuse by Mr. Kelly, is exactly that, a victim. A child victim of sexual abuse, as far as I'm concerned. And I've been in many, many meetings with law enforcement over my career, and also in this case, in some of these cases. And I can tell you that it is very painful for victims to be characterized as child prostitutes. They are not. They are victims, In some cases, they are victims of sex trafficking. In some cases, they are just have been exploited, intimidated, humiliated, and shamed. And there's no way that any person who is underage should be called or classified or characterized as a prostitute. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with prostitution, but I'm saying, obviously, to suggest that a person is, if she's underage, is very unfair, and perhaps the legislature in Minneapolis, or Minnesota, I should say, should review its legislation, its laws, and try to come up with a term that more aptly fits children who are taken advantage of and sexually abused by a predator. Okay, any other questions before we go? Thank you very much for coming. Did you want to say, are you okay? All right, okay. Say one last thing. It's not too late for even more persons who believe they were victims of Mr. Kelly to come forward. There's still time for justice for them.
And they're not alone.
That's good.
You're not alone.